everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Male Perspective. I am your host, Lana Reid. Let me bob along with my guest here. I am your host, Lana Reid, and today I have with me a gentleman by the name of Dom Brightmon. He is the host of the top-rated podcast, Going North. He is a certified self-leadership trainer and an author, and he's just out here helping people live their best lives. Like the world doesn't need more of Doms out there. But before I get started, I always like to be polite. I say thank you for making time for me and hanging out with me, and welcome to the show, Dom.
Oh, thank you, Lana, for having me on. I appreciate you. Thanks for the invitation. It's always good when I'm invited on these things to show something is being done right. Something's working.
That's right. So you over there bobbing your head. What you bobbing your head to? What you hear?
Oh, just naturalness. That's right. Just off my own darn raw energy. That's right.
All right. That's right. If you don't have it, who else gonna have it for you? That's great. Now, I mentioned in the opening, you are a self-leadership trainer. Tell us what exactly that is, because some people might not know.
Sure thing, my pleasure indeed. So, from the cradle to the grave, we lead ourselves the longest, and that's what self-leadership is all about. Because leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And what we allow to influence our lives is where our lives are going to go. Because the classic phrase of, tell me your 5 best friends, I'll tell you where your future is. And whatever you see, watch, hear, taste, or smell, that's what your life is going to be around. There's another reason why folks say you should basically, and why you really should, if you're in a part of the U.S. of A, part of the world where you're still required to wear a mask, make sure you don't wear the same mask every day, because that's going to be coming right back at you, and you're going to be tasting yesterday, and we don't need to be tasting yesterday when it's today. So self-leadership is all about the power of influence and making sure that whatever influences you, you take control of that. Self-regulation, self-management, because what you see, taste, hear, taste, and smell, that's really what it's all about. Making sure that you take care of your mind, take care of your environment, try to make sure your environment is in the right climate that you want it to be to generate success for yourself. And the trainer piece, it's a level up from just a speaker or really just a workshop facilitator, because it combines both. Because I've been gifted with this wonderful voice thanks to the almighty God above and the genetics of my wonderful parents and my lineage to really take this voice, spread it around like butter on bread, and give folks the goods, and also inspire folks to do their best, but also equip them to really share their stories. Because it's one thing to inspire somebody to run through a brick wall, it's another thing to give them a hammer and they realize, all right, now I know why I'm running through the brick wall. And I actually have a tool that helped me to get through it faster, as opposed to me hurting all my freaking bones and having cousin Artie show up a few decades early. So that's really what it's all about.
Awesome. I love it. I love the energy. And you're right about the voice. It does sound like it should be on the radio. Did any radio work in the past or no?
I've been around radio personalities just a bit, just like a little smidge. That's another reason why I started a podcast, is using the voice for good and just helping others advance, because that's my life motto: advance others to advance yourself.
Awesome. Yeah. I was wondering, because this podcast world is a crazy beast on its own. What made you say, today I'm gonna start a podcast? How'd that come about?
Oh yeah, funny enough, back in 2011, I believe it was probably like second or third year in college. A buddy of mine put me on the show called The O Show, where they're introducing and interviewing wonderful folks in the professional wrestling world, even big names like Diamond Dallas Page and Hulk Hogan and all these wonderful people. And that show went for about a good 300 plus episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And just listening to them, the way they carried themselves, and how the main guy who called himself Big Daddy Donnie, they were a few Canadian guys, even had a Canadian rapper named Danny O, and an old wrestler named Notorious T.I.D. like to play it off of wonderful rappers and such, and just hearing them every week and being like, hey, this sounds pretty freaking cool. And then after they disbanded us and put the show on a break because they basically didn't have time and they had to get on with their lives, I realized, wait a second, like I might be able to start a podcast of my own here.
Mm-hmm.
Then went on this wonderful side quest of becoming a published author of my first ever book, Going North: Tips and Techniques to Advance Yourself. And that book was written on a dare from a wonderful lady in a wonderful organization called Toastmasters, where folks get to basically practice public speaking and leadership, and basically taking that wonderful sandbox, that experiment zone, to be able to really take some of my speeches, put them into words, put it into a product, so that way not only have a story to tell, but a product to sell, and then all of that leading back into the podcast itself to eventually become a bookcaster, as I sometimes call it, where it's a way to not only promote my book, but also promote others. So the podcast came from the wonderful voice I've been gifted with, listening to the great podcast hosts and how they introduce folks, how they communicate with folks, now to be a great interviewer and just being a great listener, all the way to having a product, starting that business of authorship, and then using the podcast as another means to not only take it from a fun standpoint because I enjoy doing it, but also as a business standpoint, because one of the greatest things you could do for yourself nowadays, if you have the time, dedication, energy, and the resilience, and most of all the tenacity to start and grow an interview-based podcast, because a lot of folks are doing it. There's a reason why back in 2020 last year in April 1st, you couldn't find a microphone anywhere because everybody was stuck at home during the pandemic, unless you're an essential worker putting your life on the line for those who were being a little silly and those who maybe got caught by the darn you know what. And now we're in the stage where there's over 1 million podcasts plus out there, because a lot of folks have realized, oh wow, this is something I really enjoy doing. So that's really how the podcast came to be.
Awesome. Now, listening to you talk, and I researched a little bit before we connected today. I read somewhere that you used to be a shy kid, but nobody would be able to tell that from listening to you now. How did this transition come about?
Yeah, definitely a transition. One of the biggest, it was just basically just growing up and allowing myself to get out of my shell and choosing to go through a phase of reinvention. Because growing up, I was mostly a shy church boy, helping out in church and doing a couple plays and things like that, being in school, and heck, even playing with a couple friends of mine, the friends that I've gained. And it was, of course, a small circle, still a small circle. Might even be smaller than what it was before, thinking about it deeply now in this moment. And just really just getting into personal, really overall self-development. And that self can go into multiple ways, whether it's physical, spiritual, business, all areas of self-development. And realizing that I really have this wonderful gift to share. And in this era where a full-time job, a single income stream is not good enough to get by in today's society and thrive, like, hey, might as well use what I have. And one thing that I did in the BC before COVID era was to walk slowly through the crowd to get over my shyness. And one of the biggest keys to networking is going into whatever environment you're in, whatever scene that you're in, networking event that you're in, and coming from a place of service as opposed to coming from a place of what can I get, what can I take, and not trying to be a ninja, a business card ninja, throwing out business cards to random people. Heck, I was at one networking event a couple years ago where this one guy just came in with a big old messenger bag, really stuff. And then me and the rest of the guys are talking around a small table. And then he pulled out a whole stack of business cards, started handing them out. And one guy almost literally karate blocked the card metaphorically, because he was like, hey, at least say hi first before handing this out.
Introduce yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my goodness gracious. No networking skills whatsoever.
Yeah.
Now, I heard you mention that you were also an active member of Toastmasters. And I think public speaking is a valuable tool that a lot of people should have. In your own opinion, why do you feel people should be involved with Toastmasters or some other program, even if they have no idea that they want to stand on stage and speak in front of people? What's beneficial about these types of organizations?
Oh, there's so many benefits of the organization. So Toastmasters been around for 90 plus years, and it's thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people have joined the organization. So a lot of them have come and go, but a lot of the folks that have stuck with it and they put a lot into it, they get a lot more out of it, because it was with that organization that really we're probably having this conversation today. Because even though I consider myself a good speaker thanks to my church background and doing things like that, like I was able to really take the raw material and actually polish it up, because it's great to have the skills to pay the bills, but the polish will take you to the next level. And being in that environment where there's people that are all about self growth, personal development, and becoming better is a great place to be because the classic phrase, the 5 friends you hang around the most, or the 5 people
Yes.
you hang around the most. In other words, the top 5 influences in your life, like where your time goes the most, where your attention goes the most, decides where your future is going to be. And getting around people that were decades ahead of me, and not just in the physical body, but also in experience, helped me to level up because public speaking will give you an edge. It will raise your confidence. Even if you don't have a great voice like mine or anyone else, you still have a message to share. You still have tools. You still have different traits that will separate you from the rest of the crowd.
Yes.
So don't let the lack of a certain voice hold you back. Because at the same time, those like me who may have the talent, your raw skill will always be talent if I slack off. So
Mhm.
the thing is, boost of confidence is the main thing. And the other thing is with public speaking, with that boost of confidence will get you in more places where you can speak more because when I joined Toastmasters a year later after getting a promotion and I was in a new high orientation, I just noted Toastmasters in my hobbies section. And one of the presenters was like, "Hey, you're a Toastmaster. I know what y'all do." And next thing I know, she volunteered me, or I should say volunteered,
Voluntold.
or volunteered me in front of the HR managers, like, "Hey, Dom's a Toastmaster. You should have him speak at the next new high orientation." And voila, it happened. That opportunity to get in front of the newer staff members who are coming into the organization, networking with them, and also doing a little showing off in front of some of my colleagues who were also part of the event that few months later, all because I joined Toastmasters and I put more into what I was doing. Because the other thing about Toastmasters and public speaking is the fact not only you become a better communicator, you also gain more confidence. You'll also be able to have another skill under your belt because public speaking will set you over the edge
Mhm.
because it's great to talk one on one, but if you get really good and you get the adrenaline rush of speaking in front of a crowd, especially as we hopefully move closer and closer out of this quasi pandemic, as I'm going to call it, because it's still out there, but there's still parts of it where we could dodge if we would just do certain things. But I'm not going to get into that. It's a whole different podcast,
Yes,
whole
it
different topic.
yes, indeed. If we
And
could all
just
just collectively come together, I'll say it. I'll say it. I'll say it. If we could all just if we could all just get on the same
yeah,
page.
yeah,
Oh,
that's
but
you didn't expect to
anyway,
laugh this much during the conversation, did you?
yes, indeed. Anyways, that's a whole nother podcast. Let me go ahead and shift here because I want to talk about your books here. Um, one of your books that you have out called "Stay the Course." Right? You talk about elite performers. So I have a two-part question. What actually is an elite performer, and what are some traits that of these strange creatures? So if we can see one in public, we can identify who this person is. So if you could do that for me.
Str- Strange creatures. That's funny. Well, then again, probably listening to me and some of my puns after a while and all the groanings that have happened when I get into a room and start dropping dad jokes, you probably would call me a strange creature. But that's beside the point. But an elite performer, man. An elite performer is someone that is resilient against all odds and delivers consistent satisfaction to whatever company they work for, even if it's their own. So, even if you're working for yourself, you still have to deliver complete satisfaction to yourself and your business. Are you reaching your business goals for the quarter, for the year? Are you networking effectively and constantly trying to help out more people while people are eventually sending that good karma back to you? If you're an entrepreneur trying to raise your level in the organization in advance, are you keeping yourself busy with not only just in your place of business, in your current place of business, but are you also networking and learning from those above you and those that have been there before you and asking yourself, do they have the lives that I too want to live? Because that's another thing too about these wonderful jobs. Like, yeah, we pay the bills, but also look at the person or the guy ahead of you. Because one guy in particular, Tony Watley, good dude, he wrote this wonderful book called The Side Hustle Millionaire, which is
Mhm.
a fabulous book and audiobook folks need to pick up in addition to my books Going North and Stay the Course. is the fact that he asked himself that question and he built up a side business that he sold for millions of dollars. That was a hobby of his since he was a car guy. And he took that experience and he's now coaching and helping all these other people because in his organization, the guy who was a few or a couple grand ahead of him, he was living a life that he didn't want to live.
Hmm.
So making sure that you're self-aware too. And that's one of the major traits of an elite performer is self-awareness. Because self-awareness is one of the major keys to elite performance. It's the major key, and then there's multiple keys that break from that major key. So one of them that sticks out the most is habit awareness. Habit awareness. Are your habits helping you build for a better tomorrow, or are they helping you decay a lot quicker? Because at the end of the day, we're all gonna die.
Yes,
We're all
indeed.
mortal here.
Yes,
This
indeed.
this physical body is gonna die, but are you creating a legacy that will
That's
live
right.
on long after you're gone?
That's right. That's right. So when you wrote Stay the Course, would you say you considered yourself an elite performer at that time, or were you still growing?
I say I'm still growing to today. Funny enough, one of the major things that a lot of authors do is that they, especially nowadays, they write books to either solve their problems that they've recently solved themselves
Hmm.
or to solve a problem while they're on the way as well, because that book came from a place of grief because shortly after my first book, Going North, was published, my father died 6 months later after a long battle of dementia. And I was going through some grief that I wasn't self aware about. And through the power of really having the right people around me to really check in and call me out on my BS because they noticed things weren't where they were or where they should be, I was able to get out of that stupor a bit and realize, oh, I was not as self aware as I thought it was, even after all this self development, because it's a continuous learning journey. We're all
Hmm.
on journeys of life here. It just depends on how many quantum leaps you're able to make in this lifetime by doing the right things, getting around the right people, listening to great podcasts like this one, and sharing it with other people and helping them advance as well. So, at that time, right before the book was published, I consider myself an elite performer, but there was a time where I reached my dip thanks to that grief and realizing, oh, something isn't fully right here. I don't have all my ducks in a row. Now, granted, I'm good now, but there are still some ducks I like to get in the row because I'm still learning. I want to
Yes.
throw that piece out there because there's no perfect man behind this voice
Hmm.
behind this microphone right now. There's no perfect man. Heck, if they're gonna crucify a man that can walk on water when it's not frozen in winter, then I'm definitely not perfect here.
Thank
So
you.
just getting that out of the way is just that, yeah, so definitely wasn't leap performer when I wrote this book. It helped me to get deeper within myself and give the solution of realizing that self-awareness is the key to becoming an elite performer.
Awesome. And I think, you mentioned it reinforces something that you said before, that while you were going through this, somebody had to tap you on the shoulder and say, you're not really living in your peak form. And that's the power of having who are your five, having some people around you who, when you start to slack, can kind of say, hey, Lana, hey, Dom, what's going on here? We need to kind of shift gears here. So it's very important that you have the right inner circle around you at all times, because uh, you know, drug addicts like to hang out with other drug addicts, and elite performers like to hang out with other elite performers. Who you are is definitely your circle. So, I mean, it's just so important. Now, you mentioned your father's bout with dementia, and that's what put you into that little dip there. But that's also a story that plays out in Crappy to Happy, that book.
Oh yeah, Crappy to Happy, yeah. Sacred Stories of Transformation of Joy, wonderful multi-author book project. I'm pretty sure your listeners have seen at least one book where it's like, hey, I wrote a book. It's me and like 30 other people. We got this, baby. Yeah, number one best-selling author. It's one of those type of books. But the truth is, it's a great book where it's not just my story, but it's my story and about, I'd say around a good 29 others from about 25 other people. Because the thing is, the book is featuring real people who've gone through real stuff. There's funny stories in there from one of the wonderful ladies who spearheaded the project, talking about how she thought she had a healing, but all that really happened is that she forgot to take her contacts out, all the way to a nurse who had to give some bad news to so, to a family where their child had the darn COVID
Oh.
19 virus. So there. So it's definitely a more timely, more recent book, and heck, even myself, I share more details about my little reinvention year or my road to reinvention year of 2012, where in America we basically lost Twinkies for a month instead of the world coming to an end.
Oh
and
yeah,
the
that was a travesty. That was a travesty. I was going to the store like, really? This is like the end of the world here? The whole shelf is empty. This is the end of the world. Okay.
no more Twinkies, y'all. We can't be fat people, y'all. We can't have our
Our,
cream,
our
our cream through.
priorities, our priorities. I tell you, I was just like walking around like, really? This is it. Twinkies. Okay. I was like, oh, all right. I don't even like the thing. Even as a little girl, I never liked things, but whatever floats your boat. Okay. All righty.
It's funny looking back at that year. It's like, really?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Well, let me shift gears a little bit. Because I want to talk about your career. You are a librarian. Did I read that right?
Yep, librarian by day, leadership trainer, chocolate man by night. Well, then again, chocolate man 24/7, but that's a
Oh,
whole
they
other
can't get rid of
situation.
that. Can't get rid of that. That's all day, every day.
And I
Um,
love it too.
hey, a lot of us do. A lot of us do. I want to ask you, now that you spent some time in this career, what would you say are some life lessons that you have learned about being in that industry or being a librarian? What have you garnered from that whole experience?
Oh, quite a lot. Quite a lot. Quite a few. Funny enough, that job as a librarian in a public library setting also helped me to get out of my shy zone because when you're helping out folks in the community, you get all sorts of wonderful people. And sometimes you get some creative characters, some real characters that come in there that sometimes see you as a knowledge bartender as opposed to regular bartender. Instead of pouring drinks, I just pass you a book or maybe point you in a direction of where your kid needs to go for the research paper. And realizing that people sometimes they take their problems, they carry their problems with them, and they see a human and they just want to unleash and unload on you just because you're a random human. They may have had a bad day at work. And one of the major lessons I've learned, and heck, even for those who want to pick up the book Going North Tips and Techniques to Advance Yourself, I have a chapter in there called Life is Customer Service. Because everyone you meet is fighting an invisible battle, and it could be very hard, and you have no idea what it is. And you may never know what it truly is. So we have to really remember to keep kindness at the forefront of how we live our lives because you never know what someone else is going through. So that's
Mhm.
one major thing. And also, another major thing I've learned is that even though libraries are known for books, pivoting is required for living because a lot of libraries, especially public ones, it's just not books. It's not just books. During the pandemic in particular, it's since people couldn't be in the building to adjust the situation, try to ease the pain a bit for folks, we extended the Wi-Fi to reach the parking lot. So that way, if folks didn't have high-speed internet at home, they would at least connect to the Wi-Fi if they had a laptop. And before the pandemic started, we had about a good 150 Chromebooks that folks can check out, rent, as
Oh,
well as about a good 40 to 50 Wi-Fi hotspots. And then around, I'd say September, October last year, we added another 200 Chromebooks and another 200 Wi Fi hotspots. So that way, more folks can have a chance to connect online
awesome.
and actually have that computer because a lot of folks come in, especially in particular areas, just to use a computer, print out their documents, fill out job applications, maybe
Awesome.
even do, heck, even nowadays, Zoom calls like this. And
Okay.
really just being a community center to helping out people because it's an information sanctuary. People come there for information and for help. It ain't just books, y'all. We're past the 80s with the card catalog.
That used to be me. You'd have to pull out that long drawer. But
Classic. Yep. Classic.
that's kind of my next question. I want to say, like in today's world of technology, where everybody's Googling everything, uh, as somebody who works in the public library system, what encouragement could you give to parents or even children to like explore your local library. Why it's a good thing for you to go and check out, because I think some people don't even step foot in there.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Well, the major thing, the price point is free. Parents be like, man, this paycheck looking good. Oh crap, my kid got sick. Dang it. It's Christmas time. Oh dang, I'm broke again. No, get me out of this debt. Well, the price point is free. That's the main thing. Especially in a lot of library systems in the public, where, especially in the Maryland area, where they've gotten rid of late fees for books. So it's like, hey, if you take 2 years to turn it back in, that's cool. It's
Mhm.
all good. It's all good. We're not gonna be library police coming to your house with a battering ram and be like, librarian, where's the book?
You got
Everybody down.
you have 2 years to turn in a book now. I think I'm still running from some charges when I was 12 or something. You got 2 years now.
Yeah, we don't charge late fees. Now, granted, if it's like 3 years or something and you ain't bring it back, well, we'll put the price of the book on the account to give you the incentive to bring it back. But yeah, it's all good. You bring it back. We don't owe any money and all that good stuff. So yeah, yeah.
No,
Save y'all some money because folks need it, especially nowadays with inflation.
yes, indeed. When I was in elementary, I took an elective class, and I worked in the library. And the first book I picked up was The Diary of Anne Frank, and it began my love of books. But I would hide that book in the wrong section every day so that I could come back and read it. But that was my first introduction to the library, and I fell in love with books and reading and everything. And I just think people need to understand how vital it is, because you just don't get that experience with Google. Something about turning the pages and the scent of paper, and it's just euphoric. It's just euphoric.
Amen to that.
Okay, but let me circle back. Your Going North podcast. How often can we catch that?
Oh yes, every Monday, Thursday, and Saturday. Yeah,
Oh, you're ambitious.
yeah, I had a quick blip for a moment because I'm celebrating the 4th year of the podcast being around. With every Wednesday, there's a bonus episode, and actually, it's going to be featuring all women for the bonus episodes on Wednesday because a buddy of mine, Linda Sunshine West, has these two wonderful books. One's called Invincible. My bad, I switched the words up. Invisible No More, Invincible Forevermore. And the other one's called The Fearless Entrepreneurs. So featuring some wonderful folks on that for the bonus episodes. So every hump day, some new inspiration during September 2021. But outside of that, every Monday, Thursday, and Saturday, new episode going live. The goal for the show has a growth goal to interview over 1,000 authors across the globe. I'm about a good, I'd say, 435 in so far.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. People don't understand consistency. You need to just put your head down to the grind and keep at it, keep at it, keep at it. I love the consistency. And here we are, 400 and something episodes later. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Now, your self-leadership training, is that something people can get from you over the internet, or do they have to be in the Baltimore area, or?
Yeah, we could make it technical via Zoom. It's all good. I'd love to speak to any organization that is willing to have me come into the organization. Definitely want to get on a complimentary call, do a little lunch and learn session, and learn and see how I can best help the organization as well. First, before coming in there and trying to be a hired gun and be like, all right, y'all need to change this, this, and that. And they're like, dude, we changed that 5 years ago. That's the other reason why I want to actually learn from the folks and see how I can best help them out, because I'm JMT certified to give some self-leadership training to wonderful organizations, and the best way to help organizations and seeing where their needs need to be met in terms of the leadership area and giving them the best service that they can get from yours truly, so that way they can advance and be where they truly want to be, because everything rises and falls on leadership. Because leadership will trickle down. Leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less, and self-leadership is making sure that whatever you allow to influence you is something that'll help you to grow and advance.
Awesome. You mentioned JMT, John Maxwell. For the layman out there, some people might have heard that phrase, but don't really know what that does. I've talked to somebody before, and they were like, "Is that a real estate company?" I'm like, "No, no."
Real estate in your mind, probably.
No, it's not real estate. No. So could you explain what all John Maxwell does for people?
Sure thing. So, for those who've been living under five rocks and don't know who John Maxwell is, he is this wonderful man who's about, I'd say, 74 years old at the peak of his career because he started off as a small country preacher out in Hillham, Indiana, went to San Diego, California in the late 90s and grew his church to being one of the top 10 fastest growing churches in all of the US of A. And then leaving the religious church world, going into the business world leadership because a lot of folks, especially in the business world, would come to him in his organization for leadership training because he was giving it to churches. And ever since then, he's been on the rise and on the run. I'd say around 30, 40 years giving leadership training to folks around the world. And dude's like 74 right now at the top of his career. And he's written at least over 100 books, 100 plus books. I lost count of them. He released at least a good 3 books a year minimum, at least
Hmm.
three. And I can't keep track of all of them. So 100 books a year. And part of his team is basically folks who are certified under John Maxwell to deliver the leadership goods for organizations to help
Gotcha.
add value to organizations. So if you're looking to have value added to folks who already have value, because that's my little spin on it, because a lot of folks may say, hey, I want to add value. Well, the thing is, people have value already. If someone is living and breathing, they are already valuable
Got you.
because
Got you.
human beings are freaking awesome and they have value already. They just need the right help to unleash it, unlock it, and help it to grow and expand into the world.
Awesome. I love it. Yeah, that is amazing. It was just I encounter too many people, like I said, who don't know the awesomeness that John Maxwell has contributed to this world. I didn't know that he was 74. So, that gives me hope that I should be doing some amazing things 80, 90 years old. I got to get on the ball here because, people out here are doing it. But so that's amazing. So, Dom, I have taken up 30 minutes of your time and I have to let you go and continue to be awesome and do other things, write another book, help somebody be their best self. But I want to wrap up with my random question, and then I hope I can bother you to tell everybody how they can get in touch with you. Would that be okay?
Oh, that's not a bother.
Yeah, no, yeah, no, I tell everybody time is a gift. I think you talk about that in one of your books. Can't get it back. So I just let you know I appreciate your time. I'm not going to take up too much of it. So let's see what we've got here. We just talked about the Twinkies, but what? hopefully you won't say Twinkies. Hopefully, okay. What product would you stockpile if you found out they weren't going to sell it anymore?
Oh, wow, man. Huh. What product I would stockpile and they wouldn't have anymore? It definitely wouldn't be toilet paper. That's crazy. I don't know why that's a thing. It definitely wouldn't be that. Find a newspaper somewhere
I
because
know.
some of them call them propaganda rags. But the thing, from a if I'm being serious, definitely water. Keep some water on hand, at least a month's supply of it. Definitely keep some fresh water on hand. From a joking standpoint, those Cubano Starbucks double espresso shots, I miss those so darn much.
Oh.
That's why I hate Starbucks. Like every time they get something good, they just take it away after like a year or two. So just from a little standpoint of little indulgence, those little Cubano espresso double shots. But from a serious standpoint,
Some
making
water.
sure the hell definitely some water. Definitely some water.
I love it. I love it. So glad you didn't say Twinkies. I try to give you the side eye, like, oh my goodness gracious. Well, I have truly enjoyed myself, your humor, your energy. Nobody would expect a librarian would have a sense of humor. You guys don't have that reputation. So I truly, truly appreciate it. So you're the guy in the library where everybody's like, shh, you must be quiet. But he's over here making us laugh. It's his fault, so that's you, okay? You're the reason for all the noise in the library. Okay, I got it.
I can neither confirm or deny.
That's it. That tells the truth. All righty, Dom. Tell us how we connect with you, how we pick up the books, where we catch the podcast at, and all of that stuff. Just let us know everything.
Sure thing. So for those who've enjoyed the wonderful time on Lana's wonderful show, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. And for those who want to hear more of what the wonderful Dom is cooking, head over to dombrightmon.com. That's dombrightmon.com. And be sure to subscribe to the Going North podcast on dombrightmon.com.
I love it. Such the radio voice. Great. Well, folks, that is all for this week's episode of The Male Perspective. I hope you've enjoyed yourself as much as I have. I am your host, Lana Reid, and I will see everybody next time. Oh.